Hello students, let's continue with T.S. Eliot's poem The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. As we have seen in the previous session that this poem attempts to highlight the dilemma and indecisiveness as well as the squalor and barrenness of modern urban civilization. We have also seen in the previous session that although this poem appears at the surface level as a dialogue between two persons, but it is not so. This poem is there as an eternal debate in the mind of Prufrock. There is a debate between the two sides of his personality, which thereby highlights the nervousness and neurosis. And we can best interpret this poem as an exposition of the moods and conflicts of the mind of the Prufrock. As in the previous session, through the portrayal of the fog in his surroundings, Prufrock reflects his own mental fogginess, his own indecisiveness, his own lack of courage to handle the overwhelming question which is just disturbing him. And now what's next going on in Prufrock's mind? Let's see. And indeed there will be time for the yellow smoke that slides among the street, rubbing its back upon the window panes. Here with the very first line, there will be time, the speaker is just giving expression to his very nature of procrastination or his very nature of indecisiveness. And one more thing is to be noted down, that this phrase, there will be time, it will appear as a refrain throughout the poem. Students, refrain is a line which is repeatedly used in a song or a poem to highlight its poetic appeal. So this very line, there will be time, is used as a refrain and it recurs throughout the poem. And in speaker or in Prufrock's meditation or reflection on the yellow fog outside the window is justified because there is time for it. So it is not, as it might seem, a digression or waste of time. Similarly, after the portrayal of the fog, he again says that there will be time to prepare a face to meet the faces that you meet. Here Prufrock is talking about the masked appearances. He admits that he is worried about meeting people and it takes him quite a lot of time to prepare a face in order to meet the faces you meet. His statement that he has to prepare a face before he can interact with others suggests an image of hiding behind a mask. So, Prufrock is evidently so anxious about his capacity to interact with others that he feels he has to wear a mask in order to function socially in the world. And one more thing, that the repetitive use of face to prepare a face and to meet the faces, this repetitive use suggests that perhaps everyone is hiding their true selves behind a mask. And here Prufrock is not only talking about the masked identities, but also he is giving expression to his own procrastination and insecurity by repeatedly saying that there will be time, there will be time. His use of this phrase, there will be time, at the beginning of several successive lines. Then again, there will be time to murder and create, there will be time for the works and days of the hands, as it is visible on your screen in the last lines. This gives the sentiment a form of emphasis and the ring of truth, since he keeps repeating it in so many contexts. Indeed, Prufrock claims that there will be time for a wide range of experiences in life, from murder to creation. But despite all these boasts about how much time he has, the poem will increasingly introduce a sense that speaker does not in fact have time, that all this delay and deliberation is in fact stopping him from living a full life. And one more thing which you have to note down, that in the second last line, the use of word murder. So murder here is not being used literally. Perhaps the speaker is referring to killing one's hopes and dreams. And similarly, the word create, that could be read in a similar manner, likely is meant with reference to creative works. So here the speaker is saying that there will be time to create something, or to kill his hopes. Two things simultaneously, two opposing things are happening simultaneously. But the important point which is to be noted down here is the procrastination, the insecurity in the speaker's mind, that how he is delaying the action, that repeatedly he is saying that there will be time, there will be time. That lift, a drop, a question. And time for all the works and days of hands. The lift, that lift and drop a question on your plate. Time for you and time for me. So, the prufrock asserts that there will be time for you and time for me. Here, it is unclear to whom the you is referring. It may be the you in the sense of the reader or the interlocutor to his dramatic monologue. However, it might also refer to a particular person from whom the speaker, prufrock, seems to desire something, whether love, connection, or something else. Later lines in the poem suggest that the speaker is talking to a female lover, but given the shifting nature of the poem, we can't say for certain that is the case. But anyhow, here in these lines also, the speaker, prufrock, speaks of his own indecisiveness when he says that, and time yet for 100 indecisions and for 100 visions and revisions before the taking of a toast and tea. In the room the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. The poet speaks of coming to a decision, but then immediately defaults back to his habitual state of indecision and revision. Similarly, he turns from the hard emotional relational work of you and me to the simple ritual of having tea. And we can say that although the speaker does not articulate what is going on in his mind, but still here he has just in the very first line, which is here the text which is visible on your screen, he is talking about that lift and drops equation. Although he is aware of his sense of procrastination, that he is not able to take any decision, and he is just talking about that still there is a time for 100 indecisions, but he is talking about his indecisiveness with reference to a question, as it is referred to in the first line, and the same question was mentioned in the very opening part as an overwhelming question. But still, it is very surprisingly he has used a metaphor, that he is saying that speaker speaks of dropping a question on your plate, that he compares the posing of that overwhelming question to the serving of a meal. Although the speaker still does not articulate what this question is and why it matters, but this metaphor positions the poem in a domestic sphere in which people eat meals and take toast and tea. And strikingly and even absurdly, However, the speaker of this poem is so paralyzed by indecision and anxiety that he finds the time for 100 indecisions, for 100 visions and revisions before he has even had his day. And once again, towards the end of the text, which is there in your there on your screen, once again the speaker repeats the refrain about the woman talking about Michelangelo, and this very refrain exemplifies the way his focus, Prufrock's focus, keeps shifting throughout the poem. And he says, and there will be time to wonder, do I dare? And do I dare? Time to turn back and descend the stair with a bald spot in the middle of my hair. They will say how his hair is growing thin, my morning coat, my collar mounting firmly to the chin, my necktie rich and modest, but asserted by a simple pen. Although Prufrock continues to assert that there will be time, his procrastinations that he has all the time in the world are starting to look increasingly incongruous. He is worried, he is anxious and indecisive, even about going up the stairs and appearing in the public, and so he is constantly asking himself, do I dare? The attribution of daring to such a seemingly trivial and meaningless action like going up the stairs might seem excessive, but for Prufrock, entrance into social life seems a challenge, and that nearly defeats him. And one reason for his delay and indecision that he imagines turning back just when he is about to enter the room is his anxiety about his physical appearance, including the bald spot in the middle of his thin hair and his thin arms and legs. Once Prufrock is paralyzed with fear about his bald spot or thin limbs, he begins to imagine entirely invented conversations, and he critiques the interrupt the flow of the poem. And his procrastination thus takes on even more poignancy, because it seems that Prufrock is trying to delude himself that he has more time left, even as his indecision continues to prevent him from living a full life. They will say, but how his arms and legs are thin. Do I dare disturb the universe in a minute? There is time for decisions and revisions, which a minute will reverse. Throughout the poem, Prufrock frequently wonders whether he can dare. So the same is continued here. In this case, he wonders whether he dare to disturb the universe, suggesting that he sees these seemingly trivial decisions about what to wear and what to eat or whether to go out as having high philosophical stakes. His fear that his decisions will disturb the universe in no sense points to his extreme caution and anxiety, in which he is paralyzed by indecision because he is afraid of consequences. So this indecision is mirrored formally in the use of the enjambment in this very poem. Students, enjambment means that the sense flows from one line to another, as we see in this here in this very text which is there on your screen. Do I dare disturb the universe in a minute? There is a time for decisions and revisions, which a minute will reverse. So this very use of enjambment also leaves the second half of the question, that is exactly what the speaker might dare to do. And then there is blank space before the completion of the question, disturb the universe, could be filled by any number of things. So indecisive is the speaker that for a moment he can't even make up his mind about what he may or may not dare to do. And again, the speaker's mind keeps returning to the same thoughts, sounds, and images. For I have known them already, known them all. Have known the evenings, mornings, afternoons. I have measured out my life with coffee spoons. I know the voices dying with the dying fall beneath the music from a farther room. So, how should I presume? Here, the speaker's will to take action seems to weaken even more. So instead, he adopts a stance of world weariness, as he claims that I have known them all already. By this, he seems to mean that nothing in the normal passage of life, the evenings, mornings, and afternoons, can surprise him anymore. He claims to have measured out my life with coffee spoons. This implies that Prufrock has not lived a life which is not measured in terms of actions and resolutions. It was measured with that how much cups of coffee he has taken. It implies that he has spent most of his life engaged in domestic rituals like drinking tea and coffee. Then he hears music in another room where the voices are performing a dying fall. Dying fall is a musical term for a note that falls in a gradual decrescendo, and instead of enjoying the music, however, he remarks cynically that the voices of those singers are themselves dying, since all human beings will eventually die. So this pessimistic stance leads Prufrock to feel that he has no control or agency over his own life, leading him to ask, how should I presume? So, Prufrock's vision of life emphasizes the indifference and the cyclicality of the universe. So, in his account, events seem to constantly repeat themselves with no possibility for change or redirection. And even more pessimistically, he sees the cycle of life as leading towards only one possible direction, that is death. So, this is how these very lines portrayed the internal conflict which is going on into Prufrock's mind, and ultimately his picture which comes before us is that of a very indecisive and pessimist sort of person. So that's all about the text which we have taken up today. We'll continue with the poem in the next session. Thank you.